Today we are going to have a quick recap of structural organization. What is meant by tissue? A group of similar cells having a common origin with a specific function is known as a tissue. Animal tissues broadly classified into 4 types: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue, and then muscular tissue. And now here these tissues have a different origin. Let's have an idea. Epithelial tissue origin is that here ectoderm, endoderm and mesodermal origin. And function wise, if you go here, protection, absorption and secretion is that epithelial tissue function, along with that diffusion. Diffusion is also epithelial tissue function. Connective tissue is mesodermal origin, and here it's going to be connect different type of tissues, and it is also going to be support and transport the material. And muscular tissue mesodermal origin, and it helps in locomotion and movement. Nervous tissue is ectodermal origin, and it's going to be help here control and coordination of different parts of our body. Epithelial tissue is also commonly referred as epithelium. Epithelial tissue provides a covering or a lining for the different parts of our body. And these cells are compactly packed with a little intercellular matrix, very important from the NCERT. Epithelial tissue further divided into simple and then compound epithelial tissue. Simple epithelial tissue composed of a single layer of cells functioning as a lining of the body cavities, ducts and tubes. Compound epithelial tissue consisting 2 or more cell layers and has a protective function as it does in our skin. Simple epithelial tissue further divided into squamous epithelial tissue, cuboidal epithelial tissue, columnar epithelial tissue and ciliated epithelial tissue. Ciliated epithelial tissue. Done. Now let us have an idea. Simple epithelial tissue. Simple epithelial tissue, under this one, squamous epithelial tissue we are going to be discuss. Squamous epithelial tissue made up of single layer of cells of a flattened cells. Single layer of flattened cells with irregular boundaries. Found in the walls of the blood vessels, air sacs of lungs, means alveoli. And this is a diagram based question. The cells are here flat cells. And when it comes to cuboidal epithelial tissue is also made up of single layer of cells, and it's going to be have here cube-like cells. And it's found ducts of glands and tubular parts of a nephron like a PCT, Henle's loop and DCT. Its main function are secretion and absorption. The epithelium of a PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, will be consisting here microvilli, which going to be formed here brush bordered cuboidal epithelial tissue. Cuboidal epithelial tissue present in the PCT. Alright, and next we are going to be see that simple epithelial tissue. Under this one, cuboidal epithelial tissue. The diagram here is that cuboidal epithelial tissue having a cilia. Right? Cuboidal epithelial tissue will be consisting here the nucleus at the base of the cell, and it's going to be seen here. Cuboidal epithelial tissue seen here, inner lining of the stomach and then intestine. When it comes to here, the third one here, the ciliated epithelial tissue, which going to be made up of columnar cells or cuboidal epithelial tissue having a cilia on their surface. Hence it is called here ciliated epithelial tissue. Main function of the ciliated epithelial tissue, making a movement of particles in a particular direction, in a specific direction, is called here ciliated epithelial tissue function. And they are present in the lining of the hollow organs like bronchioles and fallopian tube. In the fallopian tube, the ciliated columnar epithelial tissue helps the movement of the ovum towards the uterus. And now glandular epithelial tissue. Glandular epithelial tissue, either it can be formed by the columnar or else cuboidal cells. It is specialized for the secretion, hence it is called here glandular epithelial tissue. Based on the cell number, it is divided into 2 types: unicellular gland and multicellular gland. And this diagram is considered here multicellular gland, and this diagram is considered here unicellular gland. Unicellular gland, best example is that goblet gland. Goblet cells or goblet gland, you can consider it. And now glandular epithelial tissue, the unicellular gland, single cell isolated as a glandular cells here, that's a goblet cells. And multicellular glands, a cluster of cells together like a salivary glands, it's going to be formed. Simple epithelial tissue, under this glandular epithelial tissue, based on the mode of secretion, again it's divided into 2 types. One is exocrine gland, another one is endocrine gland. Exocrine gland consisting of a duct, hence it is also can be called as here duct glands. duct glands. Okay, when it comes to here endocrine glands, there is no duct, hence you can consider here ductless glands. Ductless glands. So now the duct glands here, the mucous glands like a goblet cells, saliva, earwax, oil, milk, digestive enzymes, all these things will be comes under this. Salivary glands, sebaceous glands, and digestive glands, all those things, and comes under here endocrine. Okay, we are going to be see that all the endocrine glands like a pituitary, parathyroid, thyroid, thymus, etc. And now compound epithelial tissue, it's made up of more than one layer, that is multi-layered of cells. Does not have a much role in the secretion and absorption. Its main function is to protect against of a chemical and mechanical stresses. It covers a dry surface of the skin, hence you can consider this as a keratinized compound epithelial tissue. If it is present here moist surface of the buccal cavity, pharynx, then you can consider here non-keratinized. And inner lining of the ducts, salivary glands and pancreatic duct also it can be seen it. And now cell junctions. There will be three types of cell junctions. One is the tight junction. It's going to be help here to stop the substances from leaking across the tissues. So now second one, adhering junctions. Adhering junctions perform the cementing to keep the neighboring cells together. And third one is that gap junctions. Gap junctions are also can be called as here communication junctions, which helps here to communicate with each other, connecting the cytoplasm. Now you can see that here this is a tight junction and this is your gap junctions and this is adhering junctions. And here you can see that tight junction is going to be tightly, it's going to be make it that leaking that substance across the tissue. It's going to be prevent the leaking of the substance across the tissues. Adhering junctions, it's going to be keep the cells, neighboring cells together. You can see that here like a cementing. And now let us see here connective tissue. Connective tissue are most abundant and widely distributed in the body of a complex animals. And they have a specialized function of linking and supporting other tissues or organs of the body. Examples: cartilage, bone, adipose tissue and the blood. And types of connective tissue: loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, specialized connective tissue. Now the loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue has cells and the fibers loosely arranged in a semi-fluid ground substance. And these are for two types: areolar tissue, adipose tissue. Areolar tissue present beneath the skin. It supports the framework of epithelium. It contains fibroblast cells that produce and secretes the fibers. Macrophages and mast cells also present. Adipose tissue. This is also we can consider here specialized tissue for the storage of the fat. Present beneath the skin, and cells are specialized to store the fat. Excess nutrients are converted into the fat and stored in this tissue. And the cells of the adipose tissue are called here adipocytes. You can see here adipose tissue. This is here is that fat storage and these are called here adipocytes. And this is the nucleus. And here the diagram based question: loose connective tissue, macrophages, fibroblast, collagen fibers, mast cells are there here. And next, second type of a connective tissue, dense connective tissue. Connective tissue here, fibers and fibroblasts compactly packed in the dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue is of two types: dense regular connective tissue, dense irregular connective tissue. Dense regular connective tissue, the tendon and ligaments comes under this. The tendons which attach the skeletal muscle with the bones, ligaments which attach here bone to bone, and this dense irregular connective tissue. Best example, tissues present in the skin. So that's about here dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue, diagram based question. You can see here the collagen fibers are arranged in a parallel way, in a regular way. You can see that like this. When it comes to here dense irregular, these collagen fibers are not arranged in a particular pattern. So irregularly it is arranged. Hence it is a irregular. Irregular dense connective tissue present in the skin, whereas dense regular tissue, tendons and ligaments. Now specialized connective tissue, that is cartilage, bone and blood. Cartilage is that intercellular matrix material of the cartilage is a solid and pliable, resist compression. And it's present at the tip of the nose, outer ear joints, between the adjacent bones of the vertebral column, limbs and hands in the adults. Cartilage tissue. This is a resist compression, pliable. And here the specialized connective tissue, bone is also can be considered here. The bone is that hard, non-pliable ground substance rich in calcium salts like calcium carbonate salts and collagen fibers. And this tissue provides structural framework to the body, and bone supports and protects the softer tissues and organs. And bone cells are called here osteocytes, present in the space is called lacunae. And a bone marrow is the same. Bone marrow is the site of a production of the blood cells. And next, third one is here the blood, which is considered here fluid connective tissue. It contains the plasma, RBC, WBC and platelets. RBC, WBC, platelets together you can consider here formed elements. Okay, plasma will be 55% of the blood and formed elements will be together here 45% of the blood. It is main circulating fluid that helps in the transport of various substances and the only connective tissue which does not have a fibers. Fibers are absent. Okay, fibers are absent in this specialized tissue. And now this is a cartilage diagram based question. You can see that collagen fibers and cartilage cells are called here chondrocytes. Whereas here if you go with that bones are there here. The bone cells are called here osteocytes, and this is the lacunae where it can be seen it. And this is the RBC, platelets, WBC. These are example for the blood cells. A diagram based questions. And now we go with that muscular tissue. The muscle is made up of many long cylindrical fibers arranged in a parallel arrays. And these are composed of numerous fine fibrils called myofibrils. Myofibrils, the best example, actin and myosin. The muscle fibers contract, that means shortens, in response to the stimulation and then relax, that means lengthens, in return to its original position. Muscles play a major role in all the movements of the body. That means locomotion and movement. Without the muscle, we cannot do. And muscle tissue or muscular tissue is of three types: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle. Skeletal muscle, this is a diagram. This is a cylindrical shape structure and striated structure can be seen it here, and nucleus will be at the peripheral region of the cell, peripheral region of the, not at the center. And the second one is here the muscular tissue, that is smooth muscle. And here the spindle shaped cells can be seen it. And the third one is here cardiac muscle, which is having like a similar to that skeletal muscle, but here is a branch and nucleus will be at the center. And now here we can see that skeletal muscle is that multinucleated, and here smooth muscle is uninucleated, and cardiac is also uninucleated. Skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle going to be show here light and dark bands. You can see that, whereas light and dark bands are absent in the smooth muscle. Then skeletal muscle fiber are going to be here founded by sarcolemma, whereas here smooth muscle going to be surrounded by plasmalemma, and here is also sarcolemma in a cardiac muscle. Fibers are unbranched here, and in a smooth muscle is also fibers are unbranched, whereas cardiac muscle is branched. And intercalated discs are absent in the skeletal muscles as well as the smooth muscles, whereas it's present in this one. And when it comes to here, the skeletal muscle is that voluntary muscle, smooth and cardiac muscles are involuntary function. And next, the final one is that neural tissue. The neural tissue exerts the greatest control over the body, responsiveness to change the conditions. That means control and coordination. Neural control and coordination is done by neural tissue. The neurons are the units of a nervous tissue, which are excitable cells. Nervous tissue is also consisting of here the glial cells. Glial cells will not be excited cells. Glial cells can able to divide, whereas neuron cells cannot able to divide because it does not have the centriole. And next, neuroglial cells, which are going to be seen here over half of the nervous tissue. Important statement from the NCERT. Over half of its a nervous tissue. That is here neuroglial cells supports and protects the neurons. When a neuron is stimulated, an electrical impulse, it is generated and it's transferred to across the nerves. And here is the diagram: axon, cell body, dendrite, and these are here neuroglial cells. The dot things are here neuroglial cells. Alright, that's about here.